Hey guys, I'm back with another video. It's been a while since I made a video for the past 2 months, maybe 2.5 months. I've been trying to, I actually put our house on the market uh, and sold our home, me and my husband, so that we could buy a new home. And that's why I haven't made a video in a while. Buying a house can be selling and buying a house is a lot of, it can be stressful. You know, you gotta have a lot of patience for those of you who have bought and sold a home, or maybe you just bought a home. It can be pretty stressful. So that's the reason why I haven't made a video in a while. But my video today is chicken noodle soup. And this is a recipe that I have struggled to make, because some people make chicken noodle soup with chicken broth. Some people make chicken noodle soup with chicken stock. And so I was always confused about it, because it's some people in my family who have made homemade chicken noodle soup, and it just didn't, something was missing. It just didn't have that taste. It's like they didn't really master chicken noodle soup. My family and some members of my family, like my grandmother and my mom, make it with broth. I never really liked it with broth. And I have my own recipe, and I like to use stock. So this is going to be, I'm going to show you up next the ingredients that I use and what I use to make chicken noodle soup. Stay tuned. Okay, here's some of the ingredients that I use to make chicken noodle soup, homemade chicken noodle soup. I use black pepper, smoked paprika. Now, I bought this at Food Line. I use thyme, sea salt, rosemary. I like to play with that a little bit to see what can that bring out in my soup, what type of flavor, because I'm going for a certain flavor. And this is chicken bouillon, and it's granulated. This is in a powder form. It's not the cubes, but you can use the cubes if you like. But one thing is very important is making sure that you have the right noodles. And so you want to look for a noodle that is yolk free. Very important. Do not get the noodle that has yolk in it, okay? And this is the brand that I use. Okay? And I also use chicken stock. Now, I get mine at Food Line. I like the flavor of this chicken stock, and this is what I use. Now, I don't make my own chicken stock. You can, some people do, but I go out and buy my stock. So I use stock in my chicken noodle soup. I do not use broth. Some people do, but I don't. So, and I also cook my chicken, and I use chicken thighs. You know, I guess chicken thighs is a dark meat. I like the thighs because I like how tender they are in the soup. I like the flavor it brings. I don't really want to use any chicken, like maybe chicken breast. I don't want to use the white meat chicken. So I like to use chicken thighs. So what I do is I got about 10 chicken thighs in this pot, and I'm slowly letting that cook. And after that gets done cooking, and once it cools down, I would take the chicken and skin them, take the skin off of it, debone it, and take the chicken and cut it in cubes for my soup. So stay tuned. And so I also add, I want to show you guys which vegetables I add to my soup. I like to add carrots, and I use the peeled carrots. And I use celery. But one thing I like to use in my soup that not everybody does, some people do, I like to add corn. So what I do is I get like a can of kernel corn, which I don't have any corn right now. My husband is going to stop by the store and grab a can of corn. And I like a hearty chicken noodle soup. And I'm going to use my mandolin to slice up my corn. I mean, if you don't have a mandolin, you can cut it real thin. But I want to use the mandolin to pretty much slice my celery real thin and kind of chop that up and put it in my soup, and take my carrots and slice them very thin, and I add a can of corn. For this pot, for the amount of chicken noodle soup that I'm cooking, this type of pot right here, about the size of a stock pot, I only need one can. That's all I want to use is a can. I don't want too much corn, but I just want a little bit. I just like a hearty, colorful chicken noodle soup. So stay tuned, guys. And yeah, I also forgot to add green pepper. It doesn't matter what peppers you use. It's just for flavoring. And an onion. I use red onions. So all these flavors and all these vegetables, especially the onion, the green pepper, and the smoked paprika, the black pepper, all these seasonings is to bring out the flavor that I'm really looking for or really want in my soup. Because you taste a lot of, if you had different chicken noodle soups, a lot of them are they're very bland. They don't have the flavor that you really want, the chicken noodle flavor. So this right here, the chicken bouillon, this is very important to helping bring out the flavor. So I'm gonna show you how it looks, because I never bought this kind before. I usually use the cubes, but I like the way this was seasoned, and I bought this from Food Line also. And see the flavor. I'm trying to get focused. I'm trying to get the camera to focus real good. See? And I got, like I said, I got this also from Food Line. So stay tuned. I also can't forget garlic. Okay, guys, here's my chicken. It's still cooking. It's almost done. It's been cooking on about medium heat for about 30 minutes. So I'm going to take it off and let it cool down. And I also wanted to add that I don't use the chicken, all of the chicken broth in this pan. I'm not going to use all of it. I usually don't use chicken broth, but I do usually I use a cup of it. And what I do is I skim off and strain the oil from the chicken broth, and I take a cup and I add it to my stock, and that helps the flavoring. Also, that's part of the process of flavoring my chicken noodle soup. So okay, with that, stay tuned. Here's my celery. I've peeled this celery stalk. So after I peeled it, I used the mandolin, and I set my mandolin on at least 3 millimeters. And this is the size, as you can see, this is the size celery that I like to put in my soup. So if you look at it, you see right here, this is right around the size I like in my soup. Okay, now the chicken is ready. And I'm going to put the chicken in my strainer. Let it so it can cool down, and drain some of the liquid and oil, grease from the skin of the chicken. And once it cools down, I will skin the chicken and debone it. And then once I do that, I will strain some of this chicken broth and use a cup of it to go with my stock for my chicken noodle soup. So stay tuned, guys. Okay, now I've got my carrots sliced up. I use a knife to slice up the carrots. I use a mandolin to slice up after I peeled my celery. And I use a knife to chop up the garlic for flavor. And these are my green peppers. You can use red peppers. You can use yellow peppers. It doesn't really make a difference. You can use it. You don't have to use it. And I have this for, I slice this and dice this with a knife. So, and over here I have the chicken, which is draining, and wait for it to cool completely down before I debone it and skin it. And now I poured a cup of the broth from the chicken earlier, and it's sitting here, and I want to show you guys how I skim off the oil and take it out and put it in a bowl. But you just slowly skim the oil. And once I skim off the oil, I use the broth and add it to my stock. And I also want to mention that this is 2 celery stalks sliced. And this is about 4, I use about 4 cloves of garlic. And this is a half of a bell pepper. And this is about 5-6 peeled baby carrots, where I cut it up in little small pieces. And I also cut up some red onions, and I used about a half of an onion. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this, and I took my pan and poured out the rest of the broth from the chicken. And what I did is I add garlic, I add my green peppers, and I'm going to take the cup of chicken broth from the chicken I cooked earlier, and I'm going to pour it in the pan. And I'm going to slide this back onto the stove so it can start heating up. And what it's going to do is it's going to basically, as it starts heating up the broth, all those flavors are going to start coming out and mixing into the broth. And this is one of the first things I do. So, and then I'm going to take and add my onions. So basically, I add my onions, and I'm going to put it on about 3, like a low to medium. And it starts coming to a boil. A little boil. Not too much of a boil, but it's going to basically it's boiling a little bit, but it's going to simmer. And it's going to help all those flavors. And then I'm going to add my celery. So I'm going to add all this in first. And I'm going to add my celery. All of this to my pot. And next I'll be adding in the chicken bouillon for flavoring. Okay, so now I add my celery, my onions, my garlic, and it's simmering in the 1 cup of broth from the chicken I cooked earlier. And it's simmering, and so now I'm going to add in all my dry ingredients. Okay, as it's simmering, I let it simmer for about 10 minutes, guys, before I even add my stock to this. I'm just trying to bring out the flavors. And I added 1 tablespoon of the chicken bouillon, the powdered chicken bouillon, excuse me. And I add a tablespoon, and I'm using my ground smoked paprika. And what I do, guys, I don't like a lot, so what I do is I take my hand, I pinch it, and I throw in 2 pinches. Excuse me for my focus on my camera. And I put in 2 pinches. So I pinch 2 of these, because I don't want too much. So I'm stirring and trying to get all the flavor to come together. And I cover the pot, and like I said, I have it on low to medium, about 3 or 4 on your stove, and let it simmer for about 10 minutes. And then that's when I start adding in the chicken, the stock, the pepper, the salt. So that's pretty much what I do so far until I add the chicken. Okay, I just want to pretty much touch base on what I've done so far to the soup or to the stock. So I added the half a cup of, well, the whole cup, excuse me, of chicken broth for my chicken. And once I added that to the pot first, I added the celery, the onions, the green peppers, and I let that simmer a little bit for about 10 minutes. The dry ingredients I added to that, I added a tablespoon of this and 2 pinches of smoked paprika. After I did that, I added a tablespoon of thyme. And I added one teaspoon of rosemary. And I forgot two other important ingredients I think that you should add to your soup. And that is garlic powder. So I sprayed a little garlic powder and a little onion powder to my stock, just to really bring the flavor. Because one of the hardest things about making chicken noodle soup is the flavor. You want to try to build and keep building. And what I mean by that is you want to keep adding different ingredients, your dry ingredients, till you get it to the flavor, the consistency that you want. And you might start out putting some dry ingredients in it, like the paprika, the black pepper and stuff like that. But as it cooks and you start adding your ingredients to it, like the chicken, the noodles, the flavor kind of fades a little bit, and then you got to start building more and adding. So it's really hard to tell someone exactly how and how much exactly to add. You just keep building your flavoring until it gets, and keep tasting it as you cook the broth until you get it to the flavor that you want. So I'm gonna let this simmer until the carrots, the celery gets to the consistent I like, because right now they hard. So you just let it simmer until they soften up. Okay, now in this next process of making this soup, I added a little bit more pieces of onion. See those bigger pieces? I just sliced the rest of the onion and put about all 4 slices of onion in the broth just to release more flavor. Just so it can really give the soup a really good flavor. For me, the flavor that you use in a chicken soup, the type of flavor is really onion flavor for me. Because it really, I don't know, it just brings and infuses all the flavors together. But like I said earlier, and I told y'all I left out, onion powder, and I apologize for that. But it's very important to use onion powder and garlic powder in your soup. It just brings all the flavors together. And it gives it a full body flavor, your soup. And I'm taking this onion powder right now and I'll show you. I can't really give you the measurements. Just sprinkle it in there. And stir it up. Cover it up with the top. Let it simmer. I have mine on medium, 5 or 6 on my stove. And to me, the onion powder, more so than the garlic powder, is really what gives it that flavor. Because you notice how when you're cooking soup, it's very hard to get that flavor. It's just something missing. And you put all the ingredients in it, but it still doesn't have that flavor, that chicken noodle soup flavor. Well, onion powder is the key. You definitely need to make sure you have plenty of onion powder, and you just build it a little bit. You might have to add a little bit more just to build that flavor, and just taste it after you let it simmer for a little while and cover it up. Taste it, and that's delicious. I'm tasting it now. That's the flavor that you're looking for. So sometimes when people cook chicken noodle soup, they'll add all these different things in it, but they're like, okay, something's still missing. Something's still missing. And they may have added their onions or added pepper and celery, but still something's missing. It's the onion powder. Put the onion powder in there, and that will help form the flavor that you need for your chicken noodle soup. So I want to let you guys know that I like to add a can of carrots in my soup. And so what I do is I get a can of whole kernel corn. And when I open the can, I just strain off the juices. And then I take the corn, and I use a whole can of corn in my soup. And so as you can see, the soup, and see the carrots are already softened up. And I've been letting it simmer for about, I'm going to say about 30 minutes. And the onions in there. And I added all my dry ingredients. And I added a little sea salt. Maybe half a teaspoon. And now I'm going to add in my chicken. And I want you guys to see the chicken that I diced up. I diced up probably about 10, I would say 10 pieces of thighs. Took the bone out of it. Took the skin off of it. And I'm going to take this and add it to my soup. And, you know, be careful with this process. You can use a spoon or something to add it, you know, to your soup without burning yourself. And you're going to add the chicken. And once you add the chicken, then after we add the chicken, we'll add our yolk-free noodles. Okay, now I've added the chicken. As you see, there's the chicken that I added in my chicken noodle soup. Like I said, it was about 10 pieces, I believe. 10 pieces of chicken thighs that I took the bone out of it, took the skin, cut it up. And so now I've added that to it. And you see how it's got everything that you need in it. You don't have to add the corn if you don't want to. That's just how I like it. And here's a little chicken at the top. Might be a little, yes, pieces of chicken at the top. And since I've done that, now I'm going to add some noodles. Okay, guys, I added the noodles to it, and here is my recipe for chicken noodle soup. And I'm gonna let it simmer until the noodles and all the flavors come together with the noodles in the soup. And I'm gonna cover it and just let it simmer. And I still have, I'm going to put the temperature right in the middle on 5. And I used a whole bag of noodles in this stock pot, this pan that I have. And that's my chicken noodle soup. So once it's finished, I will show you my soup. Thanks, guys. Okay, well, this is the last step. This is it. This is the end of making the soup. Yes, it was kind of time consuming, but it was all worth it in the end. Because, you know, me and my family, we love comfort food this time of the year. And a good soup. And a good hearty soup, chicken noodle soup. And it's done. It's ready. Finally. Give you a close view of the soup. And it's flavored very good, very well. Like I said again, you know, one of the secrets of You know, one of the secrets, some people may call it secret, but one thing about chicken noodle soup is once you get everything together, it's very important that you don't forget the onion powder. The onion powder is what brings the flavor together and make it taste like, you know, really uh, makes it taste full flavored, like homemade chicken noodle soup, you know. So I hope you liked the video. Just please comment, like, subscribe, and thanks again, guys, for watching my video. Bye.